studied English literature from Pune University, and along with 3D animation filmmaking from Reliance, also modern masterpieces of world. Here we are back with Ms. Rathore to learn a lot about fiction writing. So welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pooja ma'am. I'm really happy and thankful to you guys for the opportunity and for having me here today.
Thank you, ma'am. And what is fiction writing? If you can give me a brief. So I'll inform everybody about the 3-day plan.
Sure.
And yeah, you do. Yes, please.
Yes, no problem. Yes. Fiction writing is basically a form of writing. When we talk about writing, there are basically writing can be divided into two main categories. One is fiction and one is non-fiction. Now, generally speaking, when I start my webinars and workshops, I generally go into creative writing because I'm more into creative writing. And in creative writing, we have creative fiction writing and creative non-fiction writing. So what we are going to learn in this workshop is fiction writing, that is creative fiction writing. Now, if I have to define fiction, it is basically anything that's made up, anything that comes out of the imagination of the writer, and it may be inspired by real events, but in fiction, we prefer not to say it out loud. Basically, even if I'm writing from my own experiences, it is still considered as fiction because there's a lot of improvisation that goes into it and a lot of dramatic portrayal of normal events. Right. So fiction always derives from real events, but ultimately it is the writer's imagination that creates fiction.
So the creative writers, creative people can only do the fiction writing, right?
Creative writers can actually do creative non-fiction as well. Creative non-fiction is something that very few people are aware of. It is like fiction. Basically, it is non-fiction which follows the rules and the techniques of fiction writing. So basically, when we talk about memoirs, autobiographies, right, and such, we are talking about not non-fiction, we are actually talking about creative non-fiction.
Okay, wonderful. So session is all yours and it's a 3-day program and yes, I am sure everybody is going to love it. So the screen share rights are given to you, ma'am, and you have, here you go.
Thank you so much. Okay,
it's all
so
yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'll be sharing my screen now because I would much rather have my presentation in front of me so that I'm able to present my thoughts in a better way. Now, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. As Pooja ma'am has already introduced myself, I would just quickly go into the introduction and tell you a little bit more about myself. My name is Heena Pardeshi. I am the author of Deceived. So this is my book, Deceived. I'm sorry because of the blur. I think the book is not visible, but you can see it on the screen, right? So this is Deceived. I have also co-authored 3 anthologies. Again, because of the blur, I don't think I'll be able to show it to you. So I'll just figure out how to cancel the blur. But the books that I've co-authored in anthologies are Life in Reverse, The Big Bang of Nonfiction. Second one is Women, a Real Gem. And third one is pretty big. It is Meraki, world's largest anthology. So I have a degree in literature, as ma'am told you already. I've completed certificate courses from Harvard University and Yale Universities, all in distance. My expertise is fiction writing. I especially expertise in long form fiction, that is generally known as the novels, the books, the full length books. Now, these are my contact details. Now, I have been requested to share my contact details so that students can stay in touch with me. So I've just created a quick slide about it. You can just screenshot it and you can reach out to me if you have any writing related queries anytime. Second, I have two big announcements to make. So I thought this was a good platform to do it. My second novel, second full form, full length novel, Sinister Town, will be releasing this December 2020. We are currently in the beta reading process of the book, and soon it'll be going for editing. So Sinister Town is a horror fiction and it is going to be released in December. The another project that I've managed to keep under wraps is a fiction writing for beginners series. Now, I have been cajoled by a lot of my students and a lot of people in India as well as outside to write a book on fiction writing, on creative writing, and on writing in general, because that is something that is not present in India right now, at least not by someone who's actively teaching fiction writing to students, to writers, to anyone who's interested in writing. So I've come up with this series of books with my publisher, Citrus Publishers. This is book 1 in the fiction writing series, Fiction Writing for Beginners. This book is actually going to come out around August end. So I really hope you guys would like it. I would just quickly take a minute to tell you about my upcoming workshop. It is a 5-day workshop from 1st June to 5th June on fiction writing. So just in case if you want to enroll in it and want to learn fiction writing in depth for beginners, then this workshop is for you. You can take the details, you can take a screenshot of the details. I'll be sharing all the links later on, so you can find those things there. Now, again, something that I'm sharing it in the start of the session because people are still coming in, right? So I tend to have my sessions a little longer. They run a little longer. So please just have a good seat and relax and have a cup of coffee or tea while watching this workshop, because I tend to talk a lot. And when it comes to fiction, it's kind of my realm. So I would quickly just like to tell you that this is something that no other writer or no other author is offering right now, not even abroad. So these are guided writing groups. I have come up with these guided writing groups especially for my students, because my students generally have a problem with either coming up with topics to write or understanding their weaknesses when they write. So these are my guided writing groups. Again, I'll be sharing the details at the end, so you can get in touch with me related to these later on, whenever you want to, whenever you have time. So I'll just quickly go through it. There are three levels. First is the basic level, second is the intermediate level, and third one is the advanced level. Basic level guided writing group is recommended for the writers who are very new to the craft. So I help you in writing. I give you the topics. I read whatever stories you write, 4 stories in a month. So there is a word count limit according to the level you are in. And I read those and then I provide feedback. Providing feedback, that is critiquing, is one of my expertise. I critique manuscripts, full length manuscripts. So critique is one of my expertise forte. So these are the groups. Second one is intermediate level, in that you get an extra half-an-hour lecture every month on a new topic on writing. Third one is the advanced level, in that you get a detailed critique and 1-hour lecture once a month on one topic of writing, and a 30 to 45-minute online writing consultation. I'm also a writing consultant. So these are the things that I do, I provide. Now, beginning with the workshop, just let me take a breath and have water and then I'll begin. Thank you. So what is literature? Now, literature is basically defined by a lot of very, very, very big dictionaries and universities as something that is written down. More or less, it's the same. So literature is so much more than that. I really do not think that even if you dedicate 2 books, 10 books, 100 books on literature, you can actually define it. But I think author Salman Rushdie, whom we all know and love, has written a beautiful piece about literature, a paragraph about literature, which I would like to share and start my workshop with. Literature is where I go to explore the highest and lowest places in human society and in the human spirit, where I hope to find not absolute truth, but the truth of the tale, of the imagination, and of the heart. Now, I really want you all to take notes. Take your own notes, because I will not be providing the notes. I generally provide notes in my workshops, but here we do not have notes. So please, if you haven't already, get a notebook and a pen, or just record it, or just write down the important points. And I really want you to write down this quote, because this quote is beautiful. And as a student of literature, now you do not have to be formally enrolled in some university to be a student of literature. I honestly believe that if you are a fiction lover, a literature lover, lover of the written word, then you are already a student of literature. You do not need any validation. You do not need anyone to tell you otherwise, or anyone to validate your concern about being a literature student. You're already a student of literature. So as a student of literature, we all should know this quote, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to relate to it, right? So now the main question of the workshop: what is fiction writing anyway, right? A non-factual story that works on the principle of willing suspension of disbelief in the reader's psyche. Fiction is a product of the writer's imagination, and its main purpose is to entertain its readers. Now, I'd like to read the first line again, and then I'll be explaining you what exactly is willing suspension of disbelief. A non-factual story that works on the principle of willing suspension of disbelief in the reader's psyche. Now, I'm pretty sure you all might have at least read or maybe watched Harry Potter movies, right? Now, I'm not able to see the chat box, so I'm not able to look at the questions that you'll be posting or anything. So I'll be coming to the questions. If you have any questions, just keep on posting them. I'll be coming to all the questions at the end of one section. Okay. I'm actually not very familiar with Zoom. That's why I'm not trying to click a lot of buttons or press a lot on my mouse pad. So please excuse me. Okay. Now, when we watch Harry Potter, or maybe when we read The Lord of the Rings, or Narnia, right? The Chronicles of Narnia books, or maybe when you watch the movies, it's okay if you haven't read the books and if you watch the movies. What happens is, now we all are intelligent beings. We all know magic is not real. I do defer to agree with this statement in its entirety, but for the sake of it, let's say magic is not real, okay? But when we watch such kind of movies, when our children watch such kind of movies, even when we adults watch them, we are ready to believe for the duration of that movie, that magic is real, that there are elves, there are other species, there are fays, there are fairies, there are dwarfs, there are dragons, right? Why do we do it when we know that they are not real? They cannot be realistic in any way. We know they are the VFX effects in the movie and imaginary made up beings in the books. Then why are we so keen on suspending our disbelief and accepting the fact that magic exists, even if it is only for the length of that movie or the length of the time in which you are reading that book? That is what is known as willing suspension of disbelief. We willingly suspend our disbelief in order to enjoy, to entertain ourselves, in order to just have fun, right? And just to let ourselves immerse in the imagination that the author or the director is presenting on the screen, right? That is what fiction is about at its very, very core. Okay. Fiction is actually a product of the writer's imagination, and its main purpose is to entertain. Now, if you will just Google search the purpose of fiction, you will find a lot of things, a lot of purposes of fiction, what fiction should do, what fiction should not do. But the fact remains, the main purpose of fiction is to entertain its reader. Now, imagine picking up a book, reading it, and not feeling entertained or not liking it, basically. What are you going to do? You are either going to just keep it aside for later reading, or you'll DNF it. Now, what is DNFing? DNFing books is basically, it means did not finish. So we mark the books as DNF. When we mark a book as DNF, it means we are not going to finish the book because we are not liking it, right? Now, I know this concept might be a bit bizarre for a lot of people, but for readers who read a lot, DNFing is a very common scenario. And I myself DNF a lot of books that do not catch my fancy or catch my attention in the first 30 or 40 pages. Now, sorry. So now, that is why the main purpose at its core, the main purpose of fiction is to entertain the readers. And I really want you all to write this down, because as my students, I want you guys to believe in it, okay, that the main purpose of fiction is to entertain. There are several other purposes of fiction, but we are not going to get into it because we are just beginning. So the main purpose as a beginner is to entertain. Now, other main purposes of fiction are, first, again, to entertain the reader. It is always going to be the first point on my list, okay? The second one is to convey the writer's viewpoint to the readers. Each and every writer has a very different point of view. Okay, I'm not talking about first person, second person, third person point of views. I'm talking about perspectives. Okay, I believe that if I have, say, a group of 5 to 10 writers, and if I give them a concept, a very detailed concept for writing a story, okay, and I give them the details, the main points of the details, the main points of the story, the main plot points, I would still get 5 very different stories, in spite of the fact that all the 5 stories are based on the same concept, the same details, the same maybe characters, but you will always get 5 different stories. That is because Each and every writer has a different imagination. Each and every writer has a very unique perspective. And that is what we are here to learn, to express. Okay. The third one is to carry out a thought experiment by a writer. Now, this is a little tricky. That's why I generally don't introduce beginners to this concept too soon. That's why I'll just explain it to you what it is, but I will not recommend you to right now get into it. Okay. Carrying out a thought experiment as a writer is something that I've done in my second novel. And from someone who's written her first book in 8 months, literally from start to finish, I got published in the 8th month. So when I started experimenting with an idea with my novel, the second novel took me 5 years. In spite of knowing everything about my characters, everything about my book, everything about the publishing industry and everything else, it still took me 5 years. So that's why I'm saying this thought experiment is a very tricky thing, and it should only be done if either you are really curious about experimenting some concept in your writing, but that will only come if you have already written something substantial and you've spent years writing. Okay, so it only comes then. So that is thought experiment basically. The next one is to explore as well as present the reality in a different way to the readers. This is self-obvious, right? It's self-explanatory. So moving on, now we are going to look at the different forms of fiction writing. The different forms of fiction writing are novels, novellas, short stories, anthologies, dramas, poems, flash fiction, microfiction, dribble, drabble, shorty, vignette. All these are just fancy names. They are fancy names for very short fiction, very short fiction. Okay, so they all have a particular word count related to them, and that's how they get their names. So all these are the forms of fiction writing. As we are just beginning and taking our first steps in fiction, I really want you guys to know about these terms. And I have an assignment for you. I know I might not be actually supposed to give you assignments for this workshop because I'm not sure how we are going to coordinate it. But for your own growth as a writer, I would like to give you an assignment anyway. And that is to research on all these forms and to try and learn about all these forms. How many word count, how many number of words or number of pages go in a certain form of fiction writing and stuff. Okay, so I want you guys to do this. Now, moving on, we are going to look at the division of fiction. How fiction is usually divided. Fiction is broadly divided into two categories. First is literary fiction, and the second one is genre fiction. Now, do you guys know about literary fiction and genre fiction in general? Not able to see the chat. Yes, okay. Let me just open the chat. So do you guys know about it?
It's 12 o'clock.
Sorry, that's my Mac. Genre fiction, do you guys know the difference between genre fiction and literary fiction? Okay, I'm not receiving replies here. No, ma'am. Okay, no problem. Okay. Now, just a second, my screen is looking a little weird. So let me just, okay. Okay, sorry. Yes, literary fiction and genre fiction. Now, When we talk about literary fiction and genre fiction, if we go by the name, it's easier to understand. Genre fiction has a lot of genres in it, right? But what about literary fiction? Now, let us look at what literary fiction is and what genre fiction is. Literary fiction is the fiction with higher literary merit than genre fiction. Generally, when we talk about novels in general, I always hear the term, and in my initial years, even I use this term a lot, which is if a book is character driven or plot driven. Right. I'm pretty sure if you guys might have been around the book community, you might have heard this word a lot, or you guys might have felt that this book is character driven, this book is plot driven, right? When we talk about literary fiction, in a very simple way, I can say that literary fiction is actually language driven. It is always character driven, but mostly it is language driven. Fiction with higher literary merit than genre fiction, fiction driven by language or prose, which is elegant, layered, lyrical, etc. Okay. Fiction focused on the character's internal conflicts, and that is complex and introspective in nature. Fiction that revolves around the social commentary and the political criticism from the point of view of your characters. And the fiction that is slow paced, it develops slowly and often tends to wander. Okay, it often tends to go off topic a lot because of introspection. Whenever you have a character going in introspection in their own thoughts, it's kind of stream of consciousness, right? What happens is you tend to go off topic a lot. So literary fiction is therefore done by only seasoned writers. Okay. Now, I think that genre fiction can be very well merged with literary fiction. And if you want to see an example of a good genre fiction mixed with literary fiction, then I would highly suggest you to read any kind of Gothic fiction. Especially there's a new book, it's not a latest book, but Things in Jars by Jess Kidd is a beautiful example of how a genre fiction novel can be written in beautiful, layered, and lyrical and elegant language. Okay, so that's an example. I would definitely want you guys to read Things in Jars by Jess Kidd. Now, we'll talk about genre fiction. Fiction broken down into variety of genres is genre fiction. Okay. It is also known as popular fiction or commercial fiction. Now, why is it called popular fiction and why is it called commercial fiction? It is called popular fiction because it is très popular. It is very popular amongst masses. It is very popular with the common people, okay, with the normal crowd that reads the book. Literary fiction is basically, it has a very limited audience, the audience who's very well educated, who get the basically metaphors and the other literary devices. But genre fiction is simple, it is plain, it is very relatable to most of the people. That's why it is known as popular fiction. Why is it known as commercial fiction? It is known as commercial fiction because it is publishers' favorite fiction, genre fiction. Publishers love publishing genre fiction. They love picking up genre fiction authors because genre fiction sells like hotcakes, okay, as opposed to literary fiction. Genre fiction is also known as the fiction for the masses. Fiction that is easier to read as well as easier to sell. And it is fiction based on entertaining stories rather than introspection and going into social and political commentary. It is more about the entertaining stories, the everyday stories, the unusual situations, right? So that is genre fiction. Now, there are 5 main genres in fiction. And now when I say there are 5 main genres in fiction, I mean there are 5 main genres in genre fiction, okay? First is romance. We all know what is romance fiction, because romance fiction, not only in India, all over the world, is the fiction, the genre fiction that sells the most. Romance, mystery or crime, that's actually the second one. Third is science fiction. Fourth is fantasy. Fifth is horror. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. There are way more genres than that. And you guys are correct. Here are some of the examples of other genre. Okay. Now, if you'll just pay attention to the slide, the presentation, it is actually divided into 3 columns. Okay. Now, just look at the first column. I'm going to read the names out. Children's fiction, middle grade fiction, young adult fiction, new adult fiction, women's fiction. These are all genres, but do you see a similarity in all these genres? These genres are basically based on the division of these genres are basically based on the age, and in the last instance, the gender of the readers. Okay. Children's fiction, in children's fiction, it is for children. Middle grade fiction is written for middle graders. Young adult fiction is written for teenagers. New adult fiction is written for readers of the age from 19 years or 20 years to 24 years. Adult fiction is fiction written for readers of 24 plus years of age. Now, we have women's fiction. Women's fiction is basically fiction written for women and mostly written by women. Okay. The next column, the next 2 columns are generally just a list of other genres. There's no particular division in that. Then we have crime thrillers, spy or espionage, serial killer, paranormal fiction, historical fiction, speculative fiction, steampunk fiction, high fantasy fiction, urban fantasy, magic realism, dystopian, one of my favorite genres, and apocalyptic fiction, again, one of my favorite genres. So all these are genres, and I'll tell you, there are 100 more. Okay, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of genre, but you do not need to concern yourself as a writer with all these genres. These many genres are enough to begin with. Okay, then you can explore, then you can research, then you can understand. But for now, as a beginner, these many knowledge of these many genres is enough. Now, the main question, how to be a writer or how to start writing. I'll just like to take just a 2-second break to have water. I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am, you deserve it. It's going so well.
Oh my God, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope so. Okay.
I think this is a question of everybody who wants to think of a career in writing.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so now we are going to look at how to be a writer or how to start writing, because what happens is, generally, if you are on Instagram, if you are on Facebook, because we live in the world where it's inevitable to be on these platforms, right? You cannot stay away from these platforms. And then in the bio of certain people, you will see that they are writers. But have you ever considered, I'm pretty sure you guys might have because you want to be writers, right? So how does a writer decide that they are a writer? How do you know if you are a writer, or how does someone become a writer? When a person can start to call themselves a writer, when can that happen? Have you ever thought about it? Please comment in the comment section. I'm not able to see it, but I will be seeing it later on. Okay, so basically, according to me, there are a lot of writers who say that if you start earning by selling your writing, that is the point you become a writer, and then you can start calling yourself a writer. But what I think is, if you write, you become a writer. Okay, it's more about faking it till you make it. Not in the negative sense, but in the sense that you actually have to envision yourself there. You have to think that you are that, then only you become it. Okay. So anyone who writes, and by write, I mean, if you write at least 3 times a week in anything, on a laptop, in a journal, in a notebook, you are a writer, and you can start calling yourself a writer. Because the sooner you start calling yourself a writer, the easier it will be for you to identify yourself as a writer inside your head. Okay, and the sooner you start taking the responsibility of being a writer. Now, how to be a writer? This is something that is kind of becoming very typical to me and my workshops. I always like to start with discovering the writer within. And I'm pretty sure a lot of my students are here today and they all have listened to this bit again and again in all the workshops. But this is for the new students and for the old ones as well. Discovering the writer within. The first thing where you need to begin as a writer is identifying what kind of a writer you are. Okay. And there are reasons why it is necessary, in which I'll go later on. But first, let me explain it to you what this little arc is. Okay. Now look at this arc. Now, because of a lot of I would say limitations in presentation, because this is my first time using Keynote. So I wasn't actually able to draw an entire spectrum. So this is what I was able to draw, an arc. So this is actually a spectrum. Now I'm going to keep my hands like this. Okay. So this is a spectrum. Okay. On the left side, we have intuitive writer, and on the right side, we have a logical writer. Now, no one in the entire world is either a complete intuitive writer, and no one in the world is a complete logical writer. Okay, that's why I say it is a spectrum, and you need to find where you are on this spectrum. Okay, now, intuitive writers, also known as pantsters or discovery writers, are the writers who write by their intuition, who write by their heart, if you want to put it that way. Logical writers, on the other hand, or plotters, or also known as outline writers or outliners, they write logically. Okay. Now, this may be a little confusing right now, but I'll just clear it to you. What happens is, I will give you my example how I write. When I write, I sit at my laptop and I kind of start writing. I just kind of start typing. Okay. That is because I'm an intuitive writer. You might have seen a lot of movies which are très unrealistic, which are very, very, very superbly unrealistic movies, in which people just sit and write for hours on end. Okay. That doesn't happen in real life. It may happen, but it is a very rare occurrence. As an intuitive writer myself, I'm actually a 90% intuitive writer. But as an intuitive writer myself, if I sit on my laptop and I start writing, there comes a point where I have to stop and think, what am I writing and how to write further, right? So in intuitive writing, what happens is the plot or the idea comes to you, okay? Now, if you have worked even on a single idea, you will be able to relate to this. The idea just comes, and when you start thinking about it, I'm not talking about writing about it, when you just start thinking about it and asking yourself questions about it, many times you will see that you can actually just develop the entire plot in your head. By plot, I mean the events in your head, okay? Okay, so I'll just give you an example. For example, if I'm sitting and I have this idea that I have a neighbor and all of a sudden there was this spark fire that sparked in their box of solar electricity or whatever, you know. So details don't matter. So what happened is there, I got this idea that what if they were at home, I was the one who called them, they came out, my husband went running, and then, you know, there was this entire scene in the night, and this happened four days ago. So what happened, I had this idea because I'm a writer, so I'm always constantly just thinking in those terms. I thought, what will happen or what would have happened if there wouldn't have been anyone in their house, jahan aag lagi, right? So just let me know if you guys want me to talk in Hindi. I'm totally okay in talking in Hindi as well. Okay. So I'll just keep it a mix now. So जिनके घर में आग लगी, अगर वो लोग नहीं होते तो क्या होता, right? So from there, I just got this idea that it would be fun to write a scene like that. Now I know a lot of people don't write a lot of dark fiction. I am a dark fiction writer, so my thoughts generally go that way, that oh my god, what all bad would have happened, right? But this is the kind of thinking that generally we all have, and we all are very curious beings, and as writers you have to be curious, okay? So ask yourself questions, and that's how you develop the plot. That's how you develop an idea in your head. That is intuitive writing. What is logical writing or the logical part of writing? That is when you have to physically sit, take a pen and paper or your laptop or your phone, some note app on your phone, and start planning on the paper what will happen. Okay. Now, what happens is, why you need to identify which kind of a writer you are is because, and this is very interesting, most of the writers get stuck and are not able to write because they simply do not know what kind of a writer they are. Okay, because the answer lies there. Now, if I'm writing something, if I'm working on an idea or something and I get stuck, and I start thinking कि ठीक है, मुझे अभी समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, maybe, you know, I'll just give it some more thought and then come back to it later on and whatever, you know. So ऐसा चलता है, okay, ऐसा होता है writing में. But what if even after a week I'm not able to come up with anything? What will I do then? That is the time that I need to tell myself that, okay, it's enough pantsing, that is enough intuitive writing. Now we need to outline, because now we are getting stuck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of paper and I'm just going to jot down the points that I've already written and kind of map out where I want the story to go or where the story wants to go, and then kind of see how I can take it there. Okay, map it out. This, what will this do is, this will help me in writing. Now, on the other hand, I talk a lot about intuitive writing because I'm an intuitive writer, okay? There are a lot of logical writers and plotters and outliners, and I'll tell you what. A lot of writers want to be intuitive writers because, let's face it, it's cute and it's cool, right? because you sit and you never run out of words and you can just write anything. But the problem is you end up writing too much. I always end up writing too much. And then what happens is I have so many ideas that I don't know which one to actually finish first. Okay. But now here I'm going to give you a good fact. Outliners or plotters are able to plot their novels so well that if they want, they can actually dish out 1 or 2 novels a year. Let it sink in. It took me 5 years for my thought experiment with Sinister Town. But if I would have been a hardcore outliner, I would have just finished it in less than 8 months. Right? So everything has its advantage and everything has its drawback. So what happens is logical writers, now I'll tell you what happens is when you start writing, okay, most of the writers in their initial days of writing are always logical writers. There's a reason to it, and there's a very good reason to it. And I'm pretty sure that you guys will enjoy knowing the reason behind it. The reason is, हमें बचपन से ये सिखाया जाता है कि कल क्या करना है, right? हमारा टाइम टेबल क्या है, हमारा बैग हमें कैसे जमाना है, हमें आगे जाके क्या बनना है, हमें उसके लिए क्या पढ़ाई करनी है. Everything is set, everything is planned, and everyone, including our parents, our family, our teachers, our friends, our cousins, our relatives, everyone expects us to know things, right? And that is a very big burden on the human brain, actually, because where the future is so unpredictable, how can you know anything? So that is the flaw in all of our upbringing. Okay. This makes our brain logic dominant. Okay. मैंने पढ़ाई नहीं करी तो मुझे जॉब नहीं मिलेगा, मुझे जॉब नहीं मिला तो मेरे को पैसा नहीं मिलेगा, मेरे को पैसा नहीं मिला, मेरी शादी नहीं हो पाएगी, मेरी शादी नहीं हो पाई तो मैं बिना फैमिली के रह जाऊंगा, because we think that settling down is marrying, having kids and having a family and stuff like that. You know, different families have different thought processes. So what happens in all this is our intuitive side is completely ignored. Completely ignored. And as a result of it, we all begin as logical writers. Now, even when I was a logical, when I started writing, I think I did not have problem in my initial year of writing is because I started with book reviewing. So I always knew what to write because I read a book, I would review it. When I reviewed it, sometimes I wrote very lengthy reviews. Sometimes I wrote only 1-2 paragraphs of reviews, right? Of the review, right? So we all begin as logical writers. The more you are going to write, the more you're going to practice your craft, the more you're going to shift on this spectrum towards intuitive side. I'm not saying intuitive side is the best side or logical is not good or something like that. No. But what happens is there's a midpoint, and that midpoint has to be reached. So there has to be a healthy balance of intuitive writing and logical writing. Because imagine this, if you plot out the entire thing and you write it like that, it would feel very mechanical. It would feel very outlined, right? It would feel like a non-fiction novel. For fiction, you need imagination. For imagination, you need intuition. Therefore, I recommend a balance of intuitive writing as well as logical writing. Now, for the logical writers, when we start out as logical writers. As logical writers, we write someday some inspiration hits us, we get the muse, and then we start writing. And what happens is we'll write a page or two, and after that we do not know what to write, and then we stop writing. Has it happened to you? It happens to so many people, they stop writing after a time. This is why you need to know what kind of a writer you are. You are simply at the logical side. You are still at the logical side of the spectrum. So what you need to do is simple. You need to sit and you need to plot. You need to sit and you need to create a bullet point list of what you're going to write next, simply because your mind wants it. Okay, your mind is still very dominant about the logical thing, so it wants to know what you are going to write, then it will feel better. So tell it. Okay, so what I recommend to all the beginner writers is, if you are going to write tomorrow, which you should, I'll be talking about developing a writing habit, plan today or take half an hour before your writing session and write down in a bullet point list, what are you going to write about? Just some starting points, just to kick off your brain, kickstart your brain. Then what happens is, then you'll be able to write. So this is why discovering the writer within is so important. Once you know what kind of a writer you are, you know what to do when you are stuck. Okay. Now, moving on. Okay, so according to the slides, intuitive writer. Now, this is how writers write. Okay, the intuitive ones as well as the the outliners. Intuitive writers grab a pen and paper or a laptop, that is your writing machine, and put out your guts. Sab nikal do paper pe. That is how intuitive writing is done. Outline writers, how do they write? How do they should write, or they generally write, is grab a pen and paper or a laptop, your writing machine, as I like to call, create an outline, a basic list of stuff that you want to write about in the order that you want to write it in. I'm sorry, there's some mistake in this. Okay, then start writing. Keep on referring to your outline and keep on writing simultaneously. Okay, create a list, start writing, refer to the list, keep on writing, refer to the list, keep on writing. That's how you'll be able to write. Now I see there are some questions in Q&A. Okay, I'll just read out the questions and try to answer them. How to know which genre I'm used to write? Okay, it is actually very easy to find out what kind of genres you would like to write or you are used to writing. You should write actually. Take a page and make a list of all the books that you love reading. And by that, I mean absolutely love. I'm not talking about the books that you have read. I'm talking about the books that you absolutely enjoyed reading. If you haven't read enough, then what you can do is make a list of all the movies that you love, your favorite movies, and you will have your genre. Okay. Second question is what to do when we are out of words as far as our vocabulary. Okay, so you are talking about vocabulary. Now, vocabulary in any language, whether it be English, Hindi, Marathi, French, you will have to develop it. You will have to put a conscious effort and develop your vocabulary. There's no way around it. But do not let it stop you from writing. जो word आता है वहां दिमाग में उसे लिख दो. Okay, so when you are writing, just write. Don't worry about your vocabulary. Don't worry about what kind of a sentence you are forming. When you are writing, just write. Vocabulary, grammar, sentences, and everything we take care of when we read what we have written. Okay, that is called revision, that is called editing. Okay, so first we write and then we think about it. Okay, then we think about the vocabulary. So then you can start working on your vocabulary side by side. सबसे easy, week में एक word नया सीखो. Take a dictionary, learn from it. You can go on some various websites. You can just download Merriam and Webster dictionary. They have word of the week, so you can learn from that. Vocabulary is something that you'll have to work on, and grammar is secondly something that you will have to absolutely work on. Even if it is English language, Hindi language, Marathi, Bengali, anything, you have to develop your grammar and you have to develop your vocabulary in the language that you're writing in. Okay. Next is what really works for most writers as far as intuitive and outlining writing is concerned. A combination of intuitive writing and an outline, that is a mix of 60 to 75% to 30 to 25% works best. If you, for example, I'm an intuitive writer, so I will put 75% tak intuitive writing in my writing and 30-25% tak outlining. Okay, so it's a mix of both. If you are a heavily logical writer, then you can have 60 to 75% of logical writing in your writing, and the rest, that is 25 to 30% of intuitive writing. Okay. How to find ideas? This is one question that I've been asked the most, I think, so far in my teaching journey of fiction writing. Just a second, just take a sip. Okay. How to find ideas? For this, I have a very, very good advice for you guys. Please note this down. See, listen, overhear, observe, imagine, think, question, be aware. Okay. Now, these are the 8 things that you all have to do. Now, by see, I mean, keep your eyes open whenever you are anywhere. Do not just be engrossed in a single person or a single situation. Always keep an eye out on things, okay? Because inspiration is a very tricky thing. It can get sparked by anything, absolutely anything. सूखा हुआ fallen leaf se bhi it can get inspired. That's why you need to keep your eyes open. Listen around you. I'm not asking you to listen to the person that you're talking to. I'm saying listen to the background noises. Listen to how the wind feels when it moves around a room. Listen to how the train tracks echo when the train is passing on them. Okay? Listen to each and everything around you. Listen how the birds chirp. Listen how the night sings. Listen to how the rain droplets are making the sound when they hit the ground, or the puddles, or the trees, or the plants. There's so much to listen about. Okay? Over here. Now, this is some advice that might get you in trouble, but what fun it would be if we don't get in trouble while writing, right? Over here, others' conversations. And I'm not asking you to get involved in others' conversations. Just be very discreet about it. If you are at a cafe, people watch. If you are at a market, or maybe again a cafe, I just keep on coming back to cafe. But yes, if you are at a restaurant, or if you are at school, you are in college, you are in office, and some other people are having conversations around you, which happens all the time, keep an ear out. Listen to what they're talking about. Okay. Now, we are not doing it out of a bad place in our heart. No, we are just doing it as an exercise for our writing, because when we write, we need a lot of characters. We need a lot of kinds of ways people talk, a lot of characteristics in people. So you need to get it all out from these things, okay? From things around you. Observe. Be very observant, okay? Observe how a person walks, because everyone walks differently, everyone talks differently, everyone gestures differently, everyone's eyes move around differently when they talk. Everyone has a very different style of maybe carrying themselves, maybe sitting, maybe getting up, maybe laughing. Some people have a very nasal tone when they laugh, you know. So observe these things and then write them down in a journal. I'll be talking about idea journal later on, but always have a journal in which you write down your observations, the things that you overhear or listen or, you know, see. Then take these things and add your imagination to it. For example, if you are at some place and you hear two females maybe talking, or maybe a couple talking, or maybe two men talking, apply your imagination there, because there will be only a part of conversation that you'll be hearing, right? So apply your imagination to what would have happened. Now we are not sitting here for judging. We are creating a story. So imagine what might have happened. Maybe he's angry because of something. Okay. So think, ask questions to yourself, and generally just be aware of whatever is happening around. Okay. That's where you get ideas from. Now, this is the most or I would say oldest writing advice on the face of this planet. Okay, every writer will give you this. Writing what you know. What does it exactly mean? It means writing about your experiences, everyday happenings, observations, your memories, and maybe those of others, significant incidents in your life, and significant incidents in the lives of the others told to you by them. Okay, they're from their perspective. Things you've seen, heard, or felt, or the ones recounted to you by others. These are the things that belong to the category of writing what you know. The second way of writing is writing what you like to read. This is something that I like to do. Now, genres or types of books you like to read, write according to that. Okay. So for example, I like thrillers that are really, really, really fast paced. So I always try to write like that. Okay. Because if I like it, then only my readers are going to like it. So it's imperative that you like what you write. Second is kind of characters that you can easily relate to. So you need to make observations here again. Okay. What are the kinds of characters that you like? You try and create characters like that. What are the stories that have touched you somehow? Try to create stories like that. The scenes that moved you, the lines that haunt you, the particular incidents in books that you seem to remember vividly. Think about what is it that makes you remember them so vividly, and try to write something like that. Okay, take inspiration from that. And even the type of movies you like to watch. Movies are stories, right? So movies are very closely related to writing. Even if you're not reading a book, go and watch a good movie that you enjoy, and then you will be inspired to write. You'll get a lot of ideas from movies. And when I say that, I really don't mean to just copy. Just a second, sorry, my presentation. Yes. So I'm not asking you to copy someone's idea or just writing whatever, you know, these are just writing practices to get you started in writing. I'm pretty sure you'll be changing as you go. Okay. You always change whatever you write. It never remains the same. Now, how to work on an idea. So, abhi humne dekha ke where to find the idea or how to find the idea. Now, let us look at how to work on an idea. Write down your ideas. Please take this note because this is very important, or just take a screenshot of this because this is very important. Write down your idea in one line, expand it into a paragraph and then into several paragraphs. In this way, write a rough summary of your idea. Okay. Figure out the central theme of your idea. We'll be talking about themes in the workshop. Develop it by brainstorming for different individual elements, characters, settings, just a second, POVs, narrative tense, etc. Work on the beginning and then the ending. Okay, now this is something which is important. When we write a story, it always has a beginning, middle, and end. Okay, so work on the beginning first and then figure out the ending, and then you work on the middle of the story. You never start out with the middle of the story ever. Unless you know the beginning and the end, at least in your head, you cannot start working on the middle, because the middle depends on how the book's gonna, or how the story is gonna end. Now, read it once as if you are reading someone else's work. Revise and rewrite, then repeat till your story feels readable and complete. Okay, so this is how you work on an idea. Now, just a second. Now we are going to talk about elements of fiction writing. Now, elements of fiction writing can also be seen as the pillars of fiction writing, something that the fiction depends on entirely and it cannot be written without. Okay. So what are the elements of fiction writing? Quickly, elements of fiction writing are basically the pillars on which fiction writing is based on. Without these pillars or elements, fiction writing will collapse and crumble instantly. There are 5 main elements without which fiction writing simply cannot be complete. These are plot, characterization, settings, conflicts, and themes. Now, all these are basically elements that we are going to discuss. So let's see what they are. Plot. A series of interrelated and relevant events that make up your story is known as a plot. Plot is how your story unfolds, the order in which the events, scenes, and action happen. Plot is the element that connects everything else in your story to your main story. Okay, that is what a plot is. Now, a lot of people confuse between plot and story. Plot is not a story. Story is not a plot. They both are two very different things. And here's how the differentiation is. Plot is the event and story is how the characters react to that event. Okay. Plot is how the story develops. Plot is how the story is told. Plot moves the action in a narrative. Okay. We'll be talking about these things. These things might seem like some words that you don't know about, but I'm pretty sure by the end of the third day, you'll know all the words. What is characterization? Characterization, I think most of you will be aware of. Characterization is the inception and development or exploration of the characters in a story in a step-by-step fashion throughout the story. It includes various kinds of characters and arcs for the characters and the journeys the characters go through and the way the characters change on the inside over the course of a story. Characterization is such a huge topic that I can have a month-long workshop on only characterization. That's how important and big a topic characterization is. So for now, just keep in mind, I will be giving you a quick kind of a shortcut for beginners to know how to create your characters. Okay, I'll show you. I think it's in the next couple of slides. Now let's talk about settings. What is a setting? Setting is the backdrop of the story, the where and when of the story. Now, imagine reading a story and not knowing where it is taking place. Why are settings so important? A lot of people don't put thought into the settings because in their heads, they know where it is taking place. In their heads, they know is it day or night? But what happens is when you're writing fiction, the reader is not sitting in your heads, dear. So you need to write everything. You need to make the reader know everything. You need to make the reader aware about each and every single thing. Okay. So setting is the where and when. So when I say setting, it's not just the place it is taking, geographical place it is taking place in. What happens is, imagine if I ask you to write a story, the same story, take it as an assignment if you wish. You can share the assignments on my writing group, Crazy Cat Writers. I'll share the Telegram link of it. You can share your assignments there and I'll have a look. Take it as an assignment, write a story of a guy, very simple, falling in love with a girl and her parents are against the guy for some reason. Maybe he's poor or maybe he belongs to some caste or whatever, you know, because we need Indian settings. So maybe because of that, the parents of the girl are not in favor of their marriage. Okay, their affair. So a girl falls in love with a guy falls in love with a girl. The parents are against their marriage. Now, I want you to write this story, okay? Because this is how you will come to know how exactly settings affect a story. So write this story in 200 words or 300 words only. In the year, say 2018, and the second story with the same things, the same characters, the same everything, details, in the year 1980, and third, write the same story in the year 2020 or 2021, and you will know why settings are important. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to, I've opened the chat, so I'll just go through the chat quickly and see if there is any doubt that anyone has posted. If you have any doubts, please post it now so that I can just see.
Yes, ma'am, there are many questions and many comments and compliments have been coming up. So you want me to take up the questions right now or you want to move ahead a little?
Okay, so I'll just finish my entire presentation and then we can go into the questions.
Sure.
No problem. Sure. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, this is my first time on Zoom. I generally use Google Meets, so I'm kind of a little skeptical about, you know, pressing the buttons here.
No worries.
Okay, so moving on. Well, let me just see what we were on. Okay, settings. Now settings include immediate surroundings of the characters, the time of the day the scene is happening. Each and every scene in the story, you have to mention in some or the other way whether it is happening in the day, in the night, in the evening, at the twilight, at the dawn or the dusk, what time exactly, you know, because a lot of things then depend on that time. The weather the story is taking place in, the time of the year, the season, the month, the historical period or era, this has a very important significance. The geographical location, city, state, country, etc. Because all this together will have a very, very, very big impact on your story, on your characters, because the backstories, that is the bane of a character, is going to be depending on all these things. Okay, so that's about settings. Now we are going to talk about conflicts. Conflicts is one of the most misunderstood concept in fiction. Conflicts. What is a conflict? Conflict kya hota hai? In a very simple definition, conflict is a problem. Okay, if I have a conflict with you, I have a problem with you. Okay, so in story, what is a conflict? Just a second, I'll just. Okay, I have to finish my tea. Sorry. Conflicts are problems. Okay, in a story, I would say, as a writer who's been writing from last 7 years, all stories are about conflicts. The more the conflicts are, the better the story. Okay. For example, take Game of Thrones. How many problems are there, right? Ned Stark has a problem with something. Arya Stark has a problem with something. Catelyn Stark has a problem with something. Cersei Lannister has a problem with something. Jaime Lannister has a problem with something. Tyrion has a problem. Jon Snow has some problem. Everyone has some or the other problem. So those are conflicts. Okay. Why we like Game of Thrones? Because it has so many problems, and in characterization, we sort out those problems. We see how those problems affect your characters. So problems are actually the heart of your stories. Okay. Now, the big problem what we are talking here right now in this slide is the main conflict of the story. Okay. I'm not talking about the other problems or the crisis. I'm talking about only the main conflict of the story. The big problem of the story that the character has to solve or face is the main conflict of your story. The clash between two opposing forces that creates the narrative thread of the story is known as the main conflict of the story. It is also known as external conflict. The problem of the story that forces the protagonist to change on the inside or grow in some or the other way, leading to internal conflicts. Internal conflicts is something that we are going to talk about tomorrow. Now, I forgot to tell you this earlier. Today, we are going to be in the entire workshop day. Today's day was dedicated for learning some concepts, okay? Getting to know what fiction is and what goes into fiction. Tomorrow's day is a little more technical. So come prepared and come prepared with a notebook, okay? Because you will be taking a lot of notes tomorrow. So we have some graphs, we have some technical things that you'll have to learn about. So in that, we'll be covering internal conflicts. And on the last day of the workshop, the third day, we'll be talking about the problems that are faced with by the writers and how to solve them. Okay. So the next topic is literary themes. I'm going to go a little quicker than before. Just let me know if you have doubts. Okay. What are literary themes? Now, literary themes is actually a concept that makes a lot of writers uncomfortable, especially the writers who have not gained some kind of a formal, and I would say formal knowledge in writing, okay? Because it sounds very literary, right? This theme, very literary. What is it actually? People like to glorify topics like this so that it gets confusing, and then writers would think that they don't know about it. Okay, that's why they gag when they hear topics such as literary themes and dramatic questions and stuff. In reality, they are just very simple concepts. So a literary theme is nothing but the central idea of your story. Okay, basically it is what a writer is trying to say through their story. The conceptual philosophy or the idea that we as writers try to convey through our stories. Okay. For example, in my novel Deceived, the central theme or the literary theme of my novel is revenge. Now, in any novel or any story with complex characters, there will be several themes. Okay, you cannot have one theme. There will be several themes. But when we talk about themes in general, we always talk about the central theme, the one main theme. And the one main theme in my novel Deceived is revenge. Okay. Now, I'll give you good examples of what all themes there are. The common themes, that is love, revenge, war, death, courage and perseverance, power and corruption, good versus evil, heroism, prejudice, history, politics, coming of age, redemption, survival. Now, individual versus society, individual versus family, individual versus supernatural, individual versus self, or individual versus nature, or individual versus technology. These are all themes, central themes. And the last one is darkness. That is very vague, but it is a theme, darkness. So this is all about themes. Now I think we are on our last topic for today. I'm not sure because I've been making a lot of slides, but I think this is pretty much the last topic for today. Tools of fiction writing. So let's quickly have a look at what are the tools of fiction writing. There are a lot of tools. Okay, what I'm going to tell you about is only 5 tools, because for starting you need only these 5 tools. If you master these 5 tools, trust me, you won't even need the other ones. Okay, because they are all very interrelated and codependent. First is dialogues. Dialogues, I'm pretty sure everyone is aware of. Dialogue is basically the verbal exchange or the written exchange between 2 people. Okay, the requirement for dialogue is there have to be 2 people or more. That is a dialogue. Internal dialogue or introspection. Now, internal dialogue is when they are actually 2 different things, but I'm just going to tell you the distinction between the 2. A lot of people confuse them. For one, internal dialogue is basically when, okay, no, I was thinking about monologue, right? Okay, dialogues are exchange of words between 2 people. Monologue, write it down, please. I don't have it here. Monologue is dialogue, spoken dialogue, or in fiction, written dialogue, when a person is talking out loud to themselves. That is a monologue. Okay. It is also known as soliloquy, but we are not going to go there. Now, next one is internal dialogue or introspection. It's the same thing, internal dialogue or introspection. That is the internal thoughts of your character. Okay. Whatever your character is thinking, it is always written in italics. Please make sure that you take a note. It is always written in italics. So you do not always have to say, she was thinking or she thought to herself, what will I do now? No, if you write, what will I do now? In italics, it means she's thinking it. Okay. Now, if we talk about introspection tend to be longer. Okay, it is like when a person is feeling absolutely low or sad or maybe too happy or very introspective. Then you have this long paragraph or maybe a litany of paragraphs on internal introspection. Okay, and that is generally very boring. Honestly, it's very boring unless it is done nicely. A lot of people don't like reading classics because first, they are slow paced. Second, because there is a lot of introspection. Okay, the characters are in their heads talking to themselves, thinking about things and just introspecting and then wandering off topics. That's why so many people don't like reading classics. The next one is point of view. Point of view, very obvious. Perspective. Here, point of view is, in fiction, the point of view from which a chapter or a story is written. Okay, because point of views change in chapters in novels. But in a story, you can have a single point of view. Point of views can be first person point of view, second person point of view, third person point of view. We'll be talking about point of views tomorrow. Okay. Then we have action. Here, by action, I do not mean a fighting scene. Okay. Action basically is the here and now, whatever is happening right now. Action is a part of the scene that is happening right now. So you can take it as a scene, but it is not necessarily a scene. Action is the here and now. For example, I pick up the phone and talk to my driver. It is action. Okay. I sit down and look at something. That is action, because on the page, in the story, it is
It's 1
happening.
o'clock.
Sorry, my Mac. It is happening right now. Okay, that is called an action. We are going to be talking about action more in the coming days, but for now you need to know action is not fighting. Action is whatever is happening in the here and now in your story. The next one is writing style. Now every writer, as I obviously already told you, has a different way of writing, has a different way of imagination, has a different way of seeing things, a perspective that influences a writer's writing style. Also, other things that influences a writer's writing style are how wordy their sentences are, what kind of words do they use, if they use descriptions a lot, if they use exposition a lot, if they use narration a lot, their way of narration, the flow of their writing, if they use simple words or complex words, if they use what kind of sentences do they use, that also has a very big impact on the writing style. So that is the writing style. Okay, so basically it's more of the syntax. Okay, moving on. That brings us to the end of this presentation, and now I'm just give me a second to stop presenting my screen so that I can just answer the questions. Pause, share, stop share. Okay, right? I think my screen has stopped sharing, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Wonderful. I'm back with you, and seriously, it's amazing. I was not aware of all this.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm so glad
Wonderful.
that.
And there were a lot of comments and questions have been coming
Okay. Sure.
even during the session, but I thought it's better we take it at the end because the flow, you
Right.
were in a constant flow. So to start with, I'll take a couple of questions, generic ones, because I'm sure you're going to cover the others tomorrow.
Right.
How to know which genre I'm used to write?
Okay.
Like,
Yes.
how to analyze?
Okay. Determining the genre is basically a very, I would say, it's a very private thing for writers. Okay, so basically no one can tell you what your genre is going to be. For example, I'll tell you, when I started writing, I actually started writing a romance story. Okay, but then I ended up killing the main hero. That was the time when I realized, no, I need to write maybe a thriller with a murder in it. Okay, so as I said, what you need to do is make a list of all the books that you really like. Not read. You might be reading a lot of books. It doesn't matter. What matters is the books that you really like. Okay. And second, you need to make a list of all the movies, your favorite movies, the movies that you love. Okay. Movies are actually a better way of trying to find out what kind of genres you like, because we watch more movies than we read the books, obviously. So make a list of the movies that you watch a lot and then you like a lot, and then you'll get an inkling of what kind of genre you might be inclined towards writing, and try it.
Okay, great. What to do when we are out of words, like vocabulary wise, when we are writing and we are falling short of words, what can be done?
Right. There are two ways of doing this. The first one is something that I do, because as a writer, I'm kind of very prone to forgetting words. Okay, I have no idea why, but I'm pretty sure a lot of writers go through it. So when you are writing and all of a sudden you think you know the word, but you are not able to remember it, just put a bracket. Just put a bracket, empty bracket, and move on. Because you will remember it eventually when you will be reading the piece again. Second, what you can do is, if you think that you are probably using the wrong word somewhere, just write it. Write it and either underline it, put it in a bracket, or just highlight it and leave it. And keep on writing. Okay? We will come to those words when I'll be telling you the techniques of revising and editing. That is the time then you put effort into finding out what word it is. Otherwise, what will happen is if you start doing it, you will lose your flow of writing. And that is something we don't want to do.
Okay, wonderful. Ma'am, Shreya wants to know what type of writing is philosophical. What is that type of writing? Plus, what's the genre is that? Philosophical writing.
It's philosophical fiction. Now, philosophical fiction is basically, I'll tell you, I haven't studied philosophy formally, but I'm pretty interested in philosophy myself. So whenever you try to explore the deeper meaning of life or the concepts that are maybe not too common for normal people. For example, I take psychology very personally, like I love it. So I kind of tend to explore some concepts of psychology in my writing. The same way, anyone who has a very natural inclination towards philosophy, they will be going into a lot of depth of why something is, how something is, why the universe works the way it works, right? So that is philosophical writing. Now, here I would like to give you a recommendation of author Matt Haig. Okay, there is this book, a beautiful book, The Midnight Library. It was just released, I think, last year. End, yes, at the end of last year. So it is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Just read that book. It is a philosophical book. So you'll get some concepts from there.
So instead of giving my comments, I want to read comments which goes hand in hand. Parvinder Singh is saying, I love the way you simplify the complexities of writing fiction. Plus, very interested session. And thank you, Heena ma'am, for a wonderful session today. And before I go ahead and read all the comments and compliments for you, I'll take up one more question.
Sure.
An intuitive writer, it's by Meera Bohra. Meera Bohra wants to know, can intuitive writer initially start with the intuitive writing and change it to logical writing, like a combination of both?
Yes, yes. If you are an intuitive writer, by all means, just sit down and write. Write whatever comes to you. Only stop when you get stuck. And if you don't get stuck, because there's a possibility, because it happens in rare instances that you won't get stuck. Okay, you might write 8,000 or 10,000 words. It might sound unrealistic, but I've gone through it. So if you are an instinctive writer, it's actually a God gift if you are an instinctive writer. So if you are an instinctive writer and if you feel like it's just coming to you, right? So just write. You don't have to work for it, right? So just write. Only go to the logical side or the outlining side when you're stuck.
Okay, great. Now I'm getting many questions, but I think few are related to the topics that will be covered tomorrow. So
Okay, right.
I'll inform everybody about the topics for tomorrow so they don't ask these questions.
Right.
How to plot a story, basics of plotting a story, description versus narration versus exposition, and characterization in fiction writing.
Right.
So let me take the last question for today, and then we'll wait for tomorrow for more questions.
Sure.
What is the most interesting way to open a story?
To open a story, for me, I would kill someone. I'll start from there. Okay, so now opening a story, I'm very happy that this question has been asked, because the opening of the story is the most important. Like in French, we call it porte, right? So it is the portal which draws the reader inside. That's why the opening of the story has to be amazing. So now pay attention. You have a story, right? Try and pick up a key event in the story. Okay, a key event, and put it at the start. Okay. Now what happens is, if you're going to pick a scene from the middle of a story and put it at the start, it automatically creates intrigue. Oh my God, ये क्या हुआ? ये कैसे हुआ? Right. For example, I'll just give you an example here. My novel starts with a prologue. Okay. We have a foreword also by an amazing author, but it starts with a prologue and it is directly a newspaper entry. Okay, of a 13-year-old girl killing her parents and disappearing. This creates intrigue because then you'll be searching for that character in the entire book.
True.
Right? You'll want to go to that moment. You'll want to find uske pehle kya hua and uske baad kya hua. So the easiest way to open a story in a very interesting way is first complete your story and then figure out a key hook. Okay, a hook which will make you as a reader very interested and intrigued. You know, the intrigue factor. Kya hoga? Kyun hua? Kaise hua? You know, the curiosity. Just pique it by putting your hook in the first opening act or the opening line or the first page.
Okay. Great idea. Seriously, with this line now, I have to go and buy that book.
I hope you do.
I will for sure. I also need your day 3 workshop for sure. How I can make it a habit of writing. So
Yes.
let's see. Yes. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. And yes, for this 3 days workshop. Even on day 1, it was so wonderful, and I'm sure that day 2 and day 3 are going to be all the more interesting. You kept our audience engaged, and they were like thinking, like, what next?
Right.
And I'm sure everybody is going to join us tomorrow at the same time, 11:30. We'll be meeting Ms. Heena Rathore tomorrow and the after tomorrow again. I'm getting it, a highly informative session. Thank you, Heena.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank you.
many comments, many compliments I've received. I will be letting you know about them.
Sure.
Tomorrow, 11:30, we are going to meet again and with the same workshop, day 2. And thank you guys for staying with us, for learning. Your learning should never stop when Creative Warrior online programs are there. So take care, stay safe, don't go out. And yes, do practice what Hina told you today, and do come back with a diary and a note and a pencil to take the notes tomorrow.
Yes.
Take care. See you. Goodbye.
Bye. Take care. Bye. Thank you.